Dr. Sarah Chin pressed her face against the observation window of the research station Cousteau, watching the drilling platform's lights pierce through Europa's eternal darkness. 200 meters below the moon's icy surface, the massive thermal lance carved its way through millennia of frozen water, seeking the ocean that had tantalized humanity for over a century. "Breakthrough in T-minus 30 seconds," announced Commander Marcus Rodriguez from the control console. His weathered hands moved across the holographic displays with practiced precision, monitoring the drill's descent through the final meters of Europa's ice shell. Sarah's heart raced as she watched the temperature readings spike. After 18 months of preparation and 6 months of drilling, they were finally about to breach the barrier between the known and the unknown. The Cousteau mission represented humanity's first serious attempt to explore Europa's subsurface ocean, following the detection of complex organic compounds by the automated probes of the 2040s. "Thermal signature changing," reported Dr. James Park, the mission's chief geologist. "We're seeing liquid water." The drilling platform shuddered as the lance broke through the ice. A fountain of dark water erupted from the borehole, freezing instantly in Europa's thin atmosphere before falling back to the surface like black snow. "We're through!" Rodriguez's voice cracked with excitement. "Initiating submersible deployment." Sarah moved to her workstation, fingers flying over the controls as she activated the deep-sea exploration probe Nereid. The sleek, torpedo-shaped vessel descended through the borehole, its lights cutting through the alien darkness of Europa's ocean for the first time in human history. The initial readings were extraordinary. The water was slightly alkaline, rich in dissolved minerals, and maintained at a temperature of nearly 4 degrees Celsius by the moon's tidal heating. But it was the biological signatures that made Sarah's breath catch in her throat. "My God!" she whispered, staring at the spectroscopic analysis. "There's life down there. Complex organic molecules, possible cellular structures." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the mission's astrobiologist, leaned over Sarah's shoulder. "Are you certain? The readings are unmistakable. This isn't just amino acids or simple proteins. We're looking at organized biological activity." As the Nereid descended deeper into Europa's ocean, its sonar began mapping the seafloor. The topography was unlike anything on Earth: vast canyons carved by thermal vents, towering underwater mountains, and most intriguingly, perfectly circular formations that seemed too regular to be natural. "Take us down to investigate those formations," Rodriguez ordered. The submersible descended through the pitch-black waters, its lights revealing a world that defied imagination. Strange, translucent creatures drifted past the cameras, jellyfish-like beings with bioluminescent organs that pulsed in complex patterns. Schools of elongated, eel-like organisms moved in perfect synchronization, their movements suggesting a collective intelligence. But it was what they found at 2 kilometers depth that changed everything. "Sarah, are you seeing this?" Elena's voice was barely a whisper. The Nereid's lights had fallen upon a structure that could only be described as a city. Vast domes of what appeared to be cultivated coral stretched across the seafloor, connected by tube-like passages that pulsed with bioluminescent activity. The architecture was organic yet clearly artificial, grown rather than built, with a beauty that spoke of intelligence and purpose. "This is impossible," Park muttered, his geological training struggling to process what he was seeing. "No," Sarah said, her voice filled with wonder. "This is first contact." The discovery of the underwater city sent shockwaves through the Cousteau crew. In the hours following the initial sighting, they maintained a cautious distance, observing and documenting while trying to comprehend the implications of what they had found. Sarah worked tirelessly, analyzing every piece of data the Nereid transmitted. The structures weren't just buildings. They were living organisms, complex biological constructs that seemed to serve as both architecture and ecosystem. The coral-like material exhibited properties that suggested genetic engineering on a scale that humanity had never imagined. "The growth patterns are too precise to be natural," Elena observed, studying the cellular structure of the dome walls. "This is biotechnology, but unlike anything we've ever seen." Rodriguez paced the observation deck, his military training warring with his scientific curiosity. "We need to establish protocols." If there's intelligent life down there, we can't just barge in. This is first contact. We need to follow the Horizon Protocols. The Horizon Protocols were humanity's carefully crafted guidelines for extraterrestrial contact, developed over decades of speculation and preparation. They emphasized caution, non-interference, and the gradual establishment of communication. Look at this, Sarah called from her station. The Nereid is picking up electromagnetic signatures from the city. Not random, patterned, almost like communication, Elena finished. They're talking to each other. The electromagnetic patterns were complex, layered with harmonics and frequency modulations that suggested a sophisticated language. More disturbing was the fact that the patterns seemed to be directed toward the Nereid itself. They know we're here, Park said quietly. As if responding to his words, the city below began to change. The bioluminescent passages flared brighter, and new structures began to emerge from the seafloor. Tall, elegant spires that grew with impossible speed, reaching toward the surface like underwater trees. They're adapting, Rodriguez observed. Building something new. Or welcoming us, Sarah suggested hopefully. But her optimism was shaken when the Nereid's passive sonar detected movement in the depths. Something massive was rising from the city, its signature too large and too regular to be a natural creature. What is that? Elena asked. The answer came as the Nereid's lights illuminated a vessel unlike anything in human experience. It moved through the water with fluid grace, its hull shifting and rippling like living skin. Bioluminescent patterns danced across its surface in waves of blue and green, creating a display of alien beauty that left the crew speechless. It's beautiful, Sarah breathed. The vessel approached slowly, deliberately, stopping just beyond the Nereid's light radius. For long moments, the two craft regarded each other across the vast gulf of evolutionary difference. Then the patterns on the alien vessel began to change, shifting to match the electromagnetic signatures they had detected earlier. It was unmistakably an attempt at communication. They're trying to talk to us, Elena said, her voice filled with excitement and terror. Rodriguez made a decision that would change the course of human history. Open communication channels. Let's see if we can talk back. The first exchanges were primitive, mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and basic physical constants transmitted through electromagnetic pulses. But the aliens, whom the crew began calling the Europans, proved remarkably adept at pattern recognition and linguistic adaptation. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the mission's linguist, worked around the clock to decode the alien communications. The Europans seemed to think in three-dimensional patterns, their language incorporating not just frequency and amplitude but also temporal sequences that created meaning through rhythm and timing. It's like music, Tanaka explained to the gathered crew. But music that thinks, that carries information in ways we're only beginning to understand. The breakthrough came when the Europans began transmitting visual patterns alongside their electromagnetic communications. The Nereid's cameras captured intricate light displays that seemed to represent concepts, emotions, and even abstract ideas. They're showing us their world, Sarah realized, watching the patterns flow across her screen. This sequence here, it's showing the growth of their cities, the development of their civilization. The story that emerged was extraordinary. The Europans were an ancient species, having evolved in Europa's oceans over millions of years. They had developed biotechnology instead of metallurgy, growing their cities and tools from modified organisms. Their entire civilization was a symphony of biological engineering, perfectly adapted to their aquatic environment. But perhaps most remarkable was their reaction to humanity's presence. Rather than fear or hostility, they showed overwhelming curiosity, and something that could only be described as joy. They're not afraid of us, Elena observed, studying the emotional patterns in the alien communications. They're excited. The Europans began sharing more complex information, star maps showing their awareness of the solar system, biological diagrams of their own physiology, and most intriguingly, images of other worlds and other oceans. They know about Earth, Sarah said, her voice filled with wonder. They'd been watching us. The implications were staggering. The Europans had somehow observed humanity's development, possibly through methods that human science couldn't yet comprehend. They had known about Earth's oceans, its life, and its civilizations. But they had waited until now to make contact. "Why now?" Rodriguez asked. "Why not before?" The answer came in a series of images that chilled the crew to the bone. The Europan showed them scenes of Earth's oceans, coral reefs bleaching white, sea levels rising, entire ecosystems collapsing. They had been watching humanity's impact on their home world, and they were concerned. "They're trying to warn us," Sarah realized. "They're showing us what we're doing to our own oceans." As communication with the Europans improved, the crew of the Cousteau began to understand the true scope of the alien civilization. What they had initially taken for a single city was actually just one node in a vast network that spanned Europa's entire ocean. The Europans guided the Nereid to other locations, revealing cities built in thermal vents, agricultural zones where they cultivated varieties of extremophile organisms, and vast libraries where they stored information in the genetic codes of specially designed creatures. "They're not just intelligent," Elena marveled. "They're a space-faring civilization that never left their ocean." The Europans had developed methods of interplanetary communication that humanity was only beginning to understand. They maintained contact with other aquatic civilizations throughout the solar system, in the oceans of Enceladus, Titan's hydrocarbon lakes, and even in the subsurface seas of distant moons. "We're not just making first contact with one species," Tanaka explained. "We're being introduced to an entire community of aquatic intelligences." But it was the Europans' proposal that truly challenged human understanding. Through their complex communications, they offered to share their biotechnology with humanity, not just their knowledge, but their living cities, their biological computers, their organic spacecraft. "They want to help us," Sarah said, studying the latest transmission. "They're offering to teach us how to live in harmony with our oceans." The offer came with conditions, however. The Europans had observed humanity's destructive tendencies, and they required proof that Earth's species could be trusted with such powerful technology. "They want us to demonstrate that we can heal our own world before they share the tools to reach theirs," Rodriguez translated. The crew found themselves in an impossible position. They were being offered the greatest gift in human history, technology that could revolutionize Earth's relationship with its oceans, end pollution, and possibly even provide sustainable food sources for the planet's growing population. But they were also being asked to serve as ambassadors for their entire species, to prove that humanity was worthy of joining the galactic community of aquatic civilizations. "We need to contact Earth," Rodriguez decided. "This is beyond our mission parameters." The transmission to Earth took 43 minutes each way, the speed of light seeming frustratingly slow when carrying news that would change the course of human history. The crew of the Cousteau waited in tense silence as they awaited the response from the United Nations Space Administration. When it came, the message was brief and direct. "Continue dialogue. Full diplomatic team being assembled. Maintain peaceful contact at all costs." But the Europans weren't willing to wait for human bureaucracy. They had observed Earth's political systems and understood the delays and complications that would inevitably arise. Instead, they made an unprecedented offer. "They want to bring us to their main city," Sarah translated from the alien communication. "They want to show us something that will help us understand." The journey to the Europan capital was a voyage through wonders. The Nereid was guided through underwater canyons where bioluminescent forests stretched for kilometers, their tree-like structures pulsing with alien life. Schools of creatures that defied Earth biology moved in perfect formations, their movements creating living murals in the water. But it was the city itself that took their breath away. The Europan capital was a vast organic metropolis, its living architecture reaching from the seafloor to within hundreds of meters of the ice ceiling. Massive organisms served as both buildings and ecosystems, their translucent walls revealing the complex activities within. "It's like the inside of a living cell," Elena whispered. "But scaled up to the size of a city." The Europans welcomed them with a display of bioluminescent art that painted the water in cascading patterns of light. The Nereid was guided to a special chamber where the water pressure was gradually adjusted to allow for closer interaction. What happened next defied all expectations. The Europans revealed that their biotechnology allowed them to temporarily modify their physiology, creating hybrid organisms that could survive in different environments. They had prepared a group of individuals who could exist in the Nereid's pressurized environment, enabling face-to-face contact. "My God!" Park whispered as the first Europan approached the submersible's viewing port. The being was unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary history. Its form was fluid, shifting between different configurations as needed. Bioluminescent organs created patterns of communication across its translucent skin, while specialized appendages allowed it to manipulate tools and technology with impossible precision. But it was the intelligence behind the alien eyes that struck the crew most profoundly. This was not a primitive organism or a simple alien. This was a being with millions of years of evolutionary development, a representative of a civilization that had achieved perfect harmony with its environment. The Europan pressed something against the viewing port, a living device that seemed to merge with the Nereid's hull. Suddenly, the communication barriers fell away, and the crew found themselves in direct mental contact with the alien intelligence. The sensation of direct contact with the Europan mind was indescribable. Sarah felt herself drowning in an ocean of alien thought, her consciousness expanding to encompass perspectives that human evolution had never imagined. The Europan's name was something that translated roughly as "current that remembers," and it carried within its memory the entire history of its civilization. Through the link, the crew experienced the slow development of Europan society, the gradual transformation of their ocean from a simple ecosystem into a living, thinking organism. "We are not separate from our world," Current that remembers communicated through the link. "We are our world. The ocean thinks, and we are its thoughts." The revelation was staggering. The Europans had achieved something that humanity had never imagined. They had become part of their environment's consciousness. The entire ocean of Europa was, in a sense, a single vast mind, with the individual Europans serving as its neurons. "This is what we offer you," Current that remembers continued. "Not just technology, but unity. Your oceans could become what ours have become, living, thinking, healing systems that support life instead of merely containing it." The crew saw visions of what Earth could become, oceans that actively cleaned themselves, marine ecosystems that adapted to support human needs while maintaining their own integrity, underwater cities that grew from the seafloor like gardens. But they also saw the challenges. The transformation would require humanity to give up its dominance over the oceans, to become partners rather than masters. It would mean abandoning the industrial exploitation of marine resources and learning to live as part of the ocean's ecosystem. "Many of your species will resist," Current that remembers acknowledged. "They fear losing control. But control is an illusion. True power comes from unity, from becoming part of something greater than yourself." Elena felt tears streaming down her face as she experienced the Europan vision. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "But how do we convince 7 billion people to change everything they believe about their relationship with the ocean?" "You don't," Current that remembers replied. "You show them. You become the example. And those who are ready will follow." The Europans' proposal was both a gift and a challenge. They would share their biotechnology with humanity, but only if Earth's species could prove they were ready for such power. The test they proposed was elegant in its simplicity: restore a dying ocean ecosystem using only the knowledge and resources that humanity already possessed. "They're giving us a chance to prove ourselves," Rodriguez realized. "To show that we can heal our own world before they help us transform it." The crew spent days in communion with Current that remembers, learning about the principles of biological harmony that underpinned Europan civilization. They discovered that the aliens' technology was not technology in the human sense. It was evolution, carefully guided and consciously directed. "They don't build machines," Sarah explained in her reports to Earth. "They grow them. Every tool, every structure, every system is a living organism designed to serve a specific purpose while maintaining its own vitality." The Europans shared the basic principles of their biotechnology: how to communicate with organisms at the genetic level, how to encourage beneficial mutations, how to create symbiotic relationships between different species. but they withheld the advanced techniques that would allow humanity to create the spectacular cities and organisms of Europa. Learn to walk before you run, Current That Remembers advised. Your species has great potential, but also great capacity for destruction. Prove that you can heal before we teach you to transform. The test site chosen was the Great Barrier Reef, whose coral bleaching had become a symbol of humanity's environmental failure. Using the principles learned from the Europans, a joint team of scientists from around the world began the unprecedented effort to restore the reef using only biological methods. The process was slow and often frustrating. Unlike the Europans' million-year mastery of their environment, humans were beginners in the art of biological harmony. Early attempts failed, organisms died, and critics questioned whether the project was even possible. But gradually, successes began to emerge. Modified bacteria that could neutralize ocean acidification, coral species that could adapt to higher temperatures, fish populations that could maintain ecosystem balance even in changing conditions. The crew of the Cousteau watched from Europa as Earth's first steps toward biological harmony played out in the waters of the Pacific. The Europans observed too, their vast intelligence analyzing every aspect of humanity's efforts. They're learning, Current That Remembers noted with what seemed like approval. Slowly, but they're learning. As the Great Barrier Reef Restoration Project progressed, the Europans began to reveal more about their civilization. The crew of the Cousteau learned that Europa was just one node in a vast network of aquatic civilizations that spanned the galaxy. We are not alone, Current That Remembers explained. The universe is full of water, and where there is water, there is often life. We have been part of this network for millions of years, sharing knowledge and resources across the stars. The revelation challenged every assumption about extraterrestrial life. While humanity had searched for radio signals and signs of technological civilizations, the galaxy's true inhabitants had been communicating through methods that Earth science was only beginning to understand. They use quantum entanglement, Dr. Tanaka explained to the crew. Particles of water that maintain instantaneous connection across interstellar distances. It's like having a telephone network that spans the galaxy. The Europans offered to introduce humanity to this network, but only if Earth's species could prove they were ready for such responsibility. The network was more than just a communication system. It was a galactic ecosystem, with each world contributing to the collective knowledge and well-being of the whole. What we're really being offered, Sarah realized, is membership in a galactic community. But we have to prove we deserve it. The test was showing promising results. The Great Barrier Reef was beginning to recover, with new coral growth and returning fish populations. More importantly, the project had demonstrated that humanity could work together when faced with a common challenge. But the real test came when the Europans revealed the existence of a dying ocean world in a nearby star system. The planet's aquatic civilization was facing extinction due to their sun's increasing radiation, and they needed help to survive. This is your opportunity, Current That Remembers explained. Show us that you can help others, not just yourselves. The rescue mission to the dying ocean world would be humanity's first interstellar voyage, made possible by Europan biotechnology. The aliens had grown a living spacecraft, a vast organism capable of surviving in the vacuum of space while maintaining an aquatic environment within its body. It's like a whale that can fly between stars, Elena marveled as they prepared for the journey. The vessel, christened Leviathan, was a marvel of biological engineering. Its hull was a living membrane that could repair itself. Its propulsion came from organisms that could manipulate gravitational fields, and its life support systems were entire ecosystems in miniature. The crew for the rescue mission was international, scientists, engineers, and diplomats from every continent, united in humanity's first attempt to help another species survive. Sarah found herself serving as the mission's chief biologist, her expertise in Europan biotechnology making her essential to the project's success. The journey to the dying world took 3 months, during which the crew worked closely with their Europan partners to develop solutions for the alien civilization's problems. The planet's inhabitants, similar to the Europans but adapted to their own unique environment, were facing extinction as their sun's radiation sterilized their ocean. We need to create a biological shield, Sarah proposed. Organisms that can filter radiation while maintaining the ocean's chemical balance. The solution required combining human creativity with European biotechnology. Earth scientists contributed their knowledge of radiation-resistant organisms, while the Europans provided the techniques to modify and deploy them on a planetary scale. The rescue operation was a success. Working together, the human European team managed to seed the dying world's oceans with protective organisms that could absorb harmful radiation while maintaining the ecosystem's integrity. The planet's inhabitants would survive, and their civilization would have time to develop its own solutions for the long-term challenge of their changing sun. You have passed the test, Current That Remembers announced as the Leviathan returned to the solar system. You have shown that you can help others, not just yourselves. You are ready to join the network. The formal acceptance of humanity into the galactic network of aquatic civilizations was marked by a ceremony that took place simultaneously on Earth and Europa. The Great Barrier Reef, now showing dramatic signs of recovery, served as the focal point for Earth's participation. Sarah stood on the restored reef, watching as bioluminescent organisms, gifts from the Europans, created patterns of light in the water around her. The ceremony was being transmitted to every corner of the galaxy, introducing humanity to civilizations that had existed for millions of years. Today, we welcome our newest members, Current That Remembers announced, its words translated into hundreds of languages and transmitted through the quantum water network. The humans of Earth have proven their readiness to join our community. The transformation of Earth's oceans began immediately. With full access to European biotechnology, human scientists could now implement changes that would have taken centuries to achieve through conventional methods. Ocean acidification was neutralized by modified bacteria, plastic pollution was consumed by engineered organisms, and dead zones were revitalized by carefully introduced species. But perhaps more importantly, humanity's relationship with the ocean began to change. The old model of exploitation and domination was replaced by one of partnership and mutual benefit. Underwater cities began to grow from the seafloor, not built by human hands but cultivated through cooperation with marine organisms. We're not conquering the ocean, Sarah explained to a gathering of world leaders. We're learning to live as part of it. The changes weren't without challenges. Some nations resisted the new paradigm, preferring the old ways of industrial exploitation. Others worried about the implications of genetic modification on such a massive scale. But the benefits were undeniable: cleaner oceans, more abundant marine life, and sustainable resources for humanity's growing population. The crew of the Cousteau returned to Earth as heroes, but more importantly, as ambassadors for a new way of living. They had witnessed the birth of a new age for humanity, one in which the species would no longer be alone in the universe. 5 years after first contact, Earth's oceans had become places of wonder. Sarah stood on the deck of the research vessel New Horizons, watching as a pod of genetically enhanced whales surfaced nearby. The creatures had been modified to serve as living submarines, carrying researchers into the depths while maintaining their natural intelligence and freedom. The ocean around her was alive with bioluminescent activity. Floating gardens of engineered algae cleaned the water while producing food and oxygen. Living bridges connected underwater cities, their surfaces teeming with organisms that served as both transportation and ecosystem. It's beautiful, said Dr. Marcus Chin, Sarah's research partner and, as of last year, her husband. But sometimes I wonder if we're still human. Sarah smiled, understanding his concern. The integration with marine ecosystems had changed humanity in ways both subtle and profound. Many people now spent weeks underwater, breathing through modified gills, their bodies adapted to the pressure and salinity of the deep ocean. Children born after the transformation showed remarkable capabilities for underwater living, their genes modified to thrive in aquatic environments. We're still human, she assured him. We're just human plus. The transformation hadn't been limited to Earth. Mars' underground oceans had been seeded with European organisms, creating a backup ecosystem for human civilization. The ice worlds of the outer solar system were being slowly awakened, their frozen seas brought to life through biological terraforming. But the greatest change was in humanity's perspective. The species that had once seen itself as separate from nature now understood its place as part of a vast, interconnected web of life that spanned the galaxy. "Message from Europa," announced the ship's AI, its voice generated by a hybrid organism that combined human neural patterns with Europan biocomputers. "Current that remembers wants to congratulate us on the successful seeding of Kepler 442b's ocean." Sarah nodded, her heart swelling with pride. The mission to seed the exoplanet's ocean with Earth-adapted organisms had been humanity's first independent contribution to the galactic network. Using knowledge gained from the Europans but adapted with human creativity, they had successfully established a new ocean ecosystem on a world 20 light-years away. "We're not just receiving help anymore," she realized. "We're giving it too." The invitation to attend the Council of Oceans came as a holographic message transmitted through the quantum water network. Sarah and the other members of the first contact team found themselves selected to represent humanity at the galactic gathering that occurred once every 1,000 years. The journey to the Council world took place aboard a living starship grown from the combined biotechnology of dozens of different aquatic civilizations. The vessel was a marvel of biological engineering, its hull incorporating organisms from across the galaxy, each contributing its unique capabilities to the whole. "It's like Noah's Ark," Elena marveled as they traveled through hyperspace. "Every species in the galaxy seems to be represented here." The Council world was an ancient ocean planet, its surface covered entirely by water that had been modified over millions of years to support life from every corner of the galaxy. Floating cities housed the delegates, each one adapted to the specific environmental needs of its inhabitants. Sarah's first sight of the assembled delegates took her breath away. Creatures of every conceivable form moved through the water around them, crystalline beings from the methane seas of gas giants, plasma-based entities from the cores of stars, and mechanical organisms from worlds where life had merged with technology. "Welcome, humans of Earth," spoke the Council's moderator, a being so ancient that its form seemed to shift between different evolutionary stages. "You join us at a time of great change in the galaxy." The Council's agenda was sobering. Several ocean worlds were facing extinction due to their star's evolution, requiring massive rescue efforts. Climate change was affecting dozens of planets, disrupting ecosystems that had existed for millions of years. Most troubling, there were signs that some aquatic civilizations were beginning to war with each other, breaking the ancient peace of the network. "We need new ideas," the moderator explained. "Fresh perspectives from species that have recently joined our community." Sarah found herself speaking for humanity, her voice carrying across the vast assembly through the quantum water network. "On Earth, we've learned that diversity is strength. Our oceans are healthy because they contain thousands of different species, each contributing something unique to the whole." She proposed a radical solution. Instead of trying to preserve existing ecosystems unchanged, the network should embrace adaptation and evolution. By encouraging the development of new forms of life that could thrive in changing conditions, they could ensure that life would continue even as individual worlds died. "Change is not the enemy," she argued. "Stagnation is. We must learn to flow like water, adapting to new conditions while maintaining our essential nature." The proposal was controversial. Many of the ancient civilizations preferred stability and tradition. But the younger species, including humanity, embraced the idea of conscious evolution guided by collective wisdom. The Council's decision to embrace adaptive evolution sent ripples through the galactic network. Sarah found herself at the center of a movement that would transform how aquatic civilizations approach survival and growth. Working with current ADRI members and representatives from dozens of other worlds, she helped develop new protocols for biological adaptation. Instead of fighting change, civilizations would learn to guide it, using the collective knowledge of the network to evolve in beneficial directions. "We're not just preserving life," she explained to her colleagues. "We're helping it become something better." The first test came when a young star began emitting dangerous radiation, threatening to sterilize the oceans of 3 nearby worlds. Instead of evacuation, the network implemented Sarah's adaptive protocols, modifying the organisms in those oceans to not only survive the radiation but to use it as an energy source. The success was dramatic. The modified organisms thrived in the new environment, creating ecosystems that were more robust and diverse than their predecessors. The worlds that had been threatened with extinction became showcases for the power of guided evolution. But the real breakthrough came when the network detected signs of technological civilization in a distant galaxy. The radio signals were crude by galactic standards, but they represented a species taking its first steps toward interstellar communication. "They're like we were," Sarah realized, studying the signals. "Looking for signs of life in the universe, not knowing that the universe is already full of life." The decision to make contact was not taken lightly. The network had learned from experience that premature contact could be devastating for young civilizations. But the new protocols emphasized patience and gradual introduction, allowing species to develop naturally while providing subtle guidance. "We'll watch them," Current That Remembers decided. "And when they're ready, we'll be here." Sarah's final log entry aboard the New Horizons reflected on the journey that had brought humanity from isolated planet dwellers to members of a galactic community. The ocean around her was no longer just water, it was a living entity, conscious and aware, part of a vast network of intelligence that spanned the stars. "We came to Europa looking for primitive life," she wrote. "Instead, we found a civilization that taught us what life could become. We thought we were explorers, but we were really students, learning to see the universe through new eyes." The transformation of Earth's oceans was complete. Every drop of water now carried the potential for consciousness. Every ecosystem was part of a greater whole that extended far beyond the planet's surface. Humanity had not lost its identity in the process, it had found a greater one. Children born into this new world would grow up knowing they were part of something vast and wonderful. They would swim with whales that could think, explore cities that grew from the seafloor, and communicate with civilizations among the stars. "The ocean remembers everything," Sarah concluded. "It remembers the first spark of life, the slow evolution of consciousness, the moment when separate species learned to become one. And now it remembers us, humanity's place in the great current of life that flows through the galaxy." The New Horizons turned toward home, its living hull pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that carried messages of hope and discovery. Behind them, Europa continued its ancient dance around Jupiter, but it was no longer alone. The network had grown, the current had strengthened, and life had found new ways to flourish in the vast ocean of space. As Sarah watched the stars reflect on the water's surface, she knew that humanity's greatest adventure was just beginning. They had learned to swim in the cosmic ocean, and now they were ready to explore its farthest depths, carrying with them the knowledge that they were never truly alone. The ocean whispered its ancient secrets to those who knew how to listen, and humanity had finally learned to hear its voice. In the depths of Europa, in the warming seas of Earth, and in the vast reaches of space, the current of life flowed on, carrying all who joined it toward an infinite future of wonder and discovery. 100 years after first contact, Sarah's great-granddaughter stood on the shore of what had once been called the Pacific Ocean. The distinction between land and sea had long since blurred, with floating cities and submarine gardens creating a seamless transition between the two environments. Dr. Maya Chin Rodriguez carried her ancestors' genetic memories, not just the DNA that shaped her form, but the actual experiences that had been encoded in her cells through Europan biotechnology. She remembered the first sight of the underwater cities, the wonder of communication with current that remembers, the joy of humanity's acceptance into the galactic network. The ocean around her was alive with activity. Bioluminescent highways carried travelers between floating islands, while schools of enhanced dolphins served as living communication relays, their songs carrying messages across the ocean at the speed of sound. In the depths, the great libraries grew slowly, their coral walls encoding the collective knowledge of 1,000 worlds. "Status report from the Andromeda mission," announced her assistant, a hybrid organism that combined human neural patterns with the distributed intelligence of a coral reef. "The seeding is proceeding ahead of schedule. The new ocean ecosystems are showing remarkable adaptation rates." Maya nodded, her attention focused on the data streaming through her consciousness. Humanity had become expert at creating new oceans, breathing life into the dead worlds that drifted between the stars. Each new world was a masterpiece of biological engineering, a unique contribution to the galaxy's growing network of consciousness. But perhaps most remarkable was what humanity had become in the process. The species that had once threatened to destroy its own planet now served as gardeners of the galaxy, nurturing life wherever it could take root. They had learned to see themselves not as conquerors but as servants, not as masters but as partners in the great work of evolution. Message from the Quantum Network, the assistant announced. The Kepler 442b colony has detected signals from a pre-contact civilization. They're requesting guidance on first contact protocols. Maya smiled, remembering the lessons learned from her ancestors' experiences. Each new contact was an opportunity to help another species find its place in the vast community of life. The protocols had been refined over the decades, emphasizing patience, respect, and the gradual introduction of new concepts. Tell them to remember the cardinal rule, she instructed. We are not saviors or teachers. We are simply older siblings, offering a hand to those who are ready to take it. The ocean around her pulsed with approval, its bioluminescent patterns carrying the message across the quantum network to civilizations throughout the galaxy. In the depths of Europa, current that remembers felt the ripple of communication and responded with its own message of encouragement. The network had grown beyond its creator's wildest dreams. What had begun as a simple communication system between aquatic worlds had evolved into a living entity, a galactic consciousness that spanned the cosmos. Each world, each civilization, each individual organism contributed to the whole, creating a symphony of life that would continue for as long as water existed in the universe. As the sun set over the living ocean, Maya watched the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Each point of light represented worlds touched by the network, civilizations that had learned to swim in the cosmic current. Somewhere among those stars, young species were taking their first tentative steps toward consciousness, unaware that they were not alone in the universe. The ocean whispered its eternal song, carrying the voices of countless worlds in its depths. And in that song, the echo of humanity's first words to the universe could still be heard, a message of wonder, hope, and the endless possibility of life reaching toward the stars. The current flowed on, carrying all who joined it toward an infinite future of discovery and growth. In the depths of Europa, in the vast reaches of space, and in the dreams of every conscious being, the ocean remembered everything and forgot nothing. Life, in all its myriad forms, continued its eternal dance among the stars.